We're living our truth now. Krista, what?
Krista who?
Christadelphian?
Did you say Christian Dolphin? So are you from Philadelphia?
Welcome to the Life After Leaving Podcast, an ex-Christadelphian podcast. Before we begin today, please note that today's episode mentions some difficult topics, including domestic violence, child abuse, pedophilia, incest, and depression. We recognize that these topics may be triggering for some people. You may want to skip over some sections of this podcast, or skip this episode if this would cause you distress to hear about these situations. However, healing often occurs when we tell and share our stories. I hope ex-Christadelphians feel empowered by sharing their stories on this podcast, and that anyone who has struggled with trauma is currently seeking the support they need. Thank you. Hello, heathens, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Zinnia. Today's guest is Keturah. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad to have you. It's been fun chatting with you, and I've been very excited for you to come on. And today I'd like to hear your story of how you became an ex-Christadelphian. So as always, I'd like to start with what your experience was like as a Christadelphian, what the process of leaving looked like for you, and then kind of where you are in life now and anything you'd like to share with people who are also going through or have gone through a similar journey. So let's start with your experience as a Christadelphian. All right, so since they're all over the world, what region are you in or were you raised in?
Yeah, New England, U.S.
Were you in one ecclesia mostly or did you bounce around at all?
One ecclesia. I was in the Springfield, Vermont ecclesia.
Okay.
I went to New England Bible School, which was usually in New Hampshire somewhere, either Lake Winnipesaukee or another place that I honestly cannot remember. And then we also visited a Cape Cod ecclesia that we would sometimes go to for gatherings.
Okay, yeah, I've never been to that one, so that's interesting. All right, and then how long has it been now since you've left the Christadelphians?
About 24 years.
Wow. So, and how long were you in it? I'm also curious, what age were you when you left?
I think I was about 20 when I really, like, the last visit. Maybe it was maybe 19. I can't remember exactly, 19 or 20.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow. So at this point, we're looking at over half of your life roughly now having left. Okay. All right. So let's get started by going back to the very beginning. Were you born into the group? I know most people are.
Yes. My great-grandparents on my dad's side, I think they were founding members of the Springfield Ecclesia.
Okay, wow. And then what was your childhood like being raised there in Springfield, in that community? I can say you are going to come back on a future episodes. There are some things we're going to talk about there as well, which I'm, again, very excited to have you on. I'm so glad you're willing to chat more. But yeah, I definitely want to hear about it.
So I feel like I have such a complex answer versus Heather's yesterday. She seemed to have like such a better experience. And I'm like, man, I really wish I had that.
I think it's good to show that there's a diversity of experiences. So like, I'm glad that she did not have a, really traumatic experience. Even when she left, she's like, there's so many people I loved and wanted to keep in touch with, but I don't want to be biased either way of showing just good stories or just negative stories. I want everyone's stories. So it's okay to be honest. I want you to be, but, as well as being respectful, we don't, use names, people that are alive and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So my experience was, so there were definitely some good things. Like as a kid, as long as terrible things aren't happening to you,
yeah,
you're enjoying, even if bad things are happening, you're enjoying the community, right? Like the running around at the whatever banquet or whatever they're
like the
doing.
Picnics or something.
Picnics.
Were there a lot of kids your age?
I was kind of like in the middle. Like there were some younger kids, there were some older. There wasn't anyone exactly my age, but close enough,
Okay.
So I enjoyed just playing whenever we could. So whenever we weren't in Sunday school or whatnot, I really enjoyed the picnics.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Was it fairly rural in that area? That's what I always picture with Vermont.
Yeah. So the Springfield Ecclesia is a one-room schoolhouse. And I think it was like the 50s or the 60s. The Ecclesia bought it from the town.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a school up until, I don't know, maybe the early, maybe, I'm not exactly sure, but
That's okay.
it was in the middle of nowhere.
I actually Googled it and they have a history on their website. So you don't have to worry about it because if people are interested, they can Google Springfield Christadelphians, Vermont and read all about it and look at pictures.
Yeah, and I actually just visited the site and it looks like they updated it. It looks more modern. So, I mean, so to go back to your question, I don't want to say that there weren't any positives. Like, there were certainly some very nice people, some people who were comforting that I was glad to be around as a kid. But overall, I found it oppressive.
At what age did you start feeling that? And like what ways was it that you were starting to pick up on that it felt oppressive to you? Was it like as a woman? Was it as a child? Like what was coming into play that you were picking up on?
So there was a lot of domestic abuse in my family. And when we went to get help from the ecclesia, they weren't helpful. They were the opposite of helpful.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
I was abused by my father. He sexually molested me. He was very abusive to my entire family. I felt a lot of shame. And I felt that shame from people. I felt like people looked at me differently after I knew that they knew about it.
They knew? That's
Of
terrible.
course. It wasn't out of the ordinary in that church. And I say church because I'm used to talking to other people and saying church, but I mean ecclesia.
Yeah, we all know this is a safe space to use the word ecclesia and no one's going to actually raise an eyebrow. And so it was really spread within your family. Did you also have like siblings and like a mother and other people that were experiencing different types of abuse in the household as well then?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I was the only one, at least that we know of, that experienced the sexual abuse, but he was violent and frightening to all of us.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, and I appreciate you being honest because I know that's a really tough thing to say to anyone, let alone to a group of people that will be listening here. And you definitely didn't deserve to be treated that way. So I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right, that's definitely a red flag for you then, because I imagine that must have been weird as a little girl. You know, you're looking up at the podium and it's always a man up there, and then your dad goes up there and he's trying to tell you about salvation and how you should live your life and, you know, how to be a good person. So I'm sure in your head or your heart, you started noticing some of that irony, hypocrisy, anything like that. So I imagine that was definitely hard, and especially if it was something that was happening with other brothers and other families as well. That's even scarier.
Yeah, it was a pattern, and it wasn't just my dad, it was other people that it just kept happening. They would get up and preach about forgiveness.
Of course, because they don't want to preach about accountability, do they? That's not the word on the tip of their tongue.
That's the thing that grated me the most and felt the most oppressive to me, is that I knew, even as a young child and a teenager, I knew exactly what their hypocrisy was like. Mm-hmm. And it felt like there was nothing that I could do about it. I was taught to just be like, nah, it's all right. And I had a lot of pressure to forgive.
Yeah, I think that's even learned helplessness. That happens a lot with people who are abused, because every time they do seek help or they say, hey, this is wrong, when you're in an environment like that, that is constantly telling you, we don't care that this is wrong, or we're going to condone this, or we're going to put it on you and victim blame and say you need to forgive, this is your problem, then at some point it really wears you down, where it makes it harder to then keep trying to get help and get out of that situation. So I am glad to see that you are, you know, safe and, you know, have survived that, to be here to interview today, and to be brave to share your story, because it sounds like that was a really rough beginning. And then I had one other question about just the ecclesia in general did you grow up kind of in like a family ecclesia? Like I was related to like at least 50% of the people in my ecclesia. Like was that the same with you or was it like actually like different people, like different families?
It's interesting how I guess I didn't realize that it was like a thing in every ecclesia to call everybody aunt and uncle. Because in mine, like they really were like aunts and uncles or cousins. And like for the most part, I think there was maybe one family that I really wasn't related to, but the rest of them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very interesting how that line often with family and religion is just so blurred there.
Yeah. It was weird. Like telling other kids that these people were my aunt and uncles.
All right. So let's go forward a little bit. Were you a baptized Christadelphian? Did you get baptized at all in that ecclesia?
I did not.
Okay. So you never ever? I'm surprised because you didn't leave until you were over 18. And usually they put the pressure on you before then, right?
Yeah, there was pressure. I think the big reason why I didn't is because I stopped going when I was 16. My mom was fed up, and
really,
yes, it was a really seriously bad situation with my brother-in-law at the time. They were allowing him to speak on Sunday when they knew that he did horrible things to my sister. And my mother was like, okay, we're not going to go on Sunday. And it ended up being like many Sundays of not going.
Yeah.
But she never went back.
Wow. Okay.
At that time, up until I was about 19 or 20, I still felt like, oh, well, they're my family. I guess I still kind of believed, or I wanted to try to believe.
I do like that. It sounds like she at least started to consider the mental health of her children at that point, or herself. I don't know exactly the situation, but I'm glad to see that there was that humanity there, even after having gone through abuse and all of that, where she finally drew a line instead of continuing to allow herself and others to go through that.
She's incredibly strong. Mm-hmm. And I recently talked to her about it, like maybe it was a year ago. Realized that I never talked to her about it because I think that was about the time that I found the ex-Christadelphian Facebook group.
Oh, it was only a year ago. Okay. Well,
I think it was a year, maybe a year and a half. And I was reading the other stories of people who had left. And I knew that my mom felt isolated at the time. But as an adult, understanding it is different. And so I went to her and I was like, I just want you to know I really understand now how difficult that was for you to leave. Mm-hmm. And I also thanked her for taking me with her.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds like a really powerful conversation. That was nice that you're able to see that and have that time with her to reflect on that. All right. So you got out without getting baptized. So I guess you're less on the hook than the rest of us heathens. You're like, well, technically I didn't divorce my husband Jesus, so we're all good.
Oh my God.
And did you ever have any responsibilities when you were at the ecclesia, or did you not participate as much with some of the more traditional roles?
I think that I would have. I knew what my prospects were as a woman Christadelphian.
Yeah.
And like my grandmother was the piano player, or the organ or whatever. I had been, kind of thinking of like, maybe I'll play the piano.
You sound really excited about that. Wasn't your true calling to be a pianist playing the same 5 hymns every Sunday for the rest of your life?
Oh God, like really, like it's like that's your option. Like you either like teach kids about whatever weird Bible stories.
Yeah, the 10 that me and Heather went over already in episode 1. Over and over.
Yeah, it's either that or you play the piano or
organ, maybe, if you've got the money for the
organ. Like that's your exciting. Oh, and then you have to marry Christadelphian man who is gonna think that he can do whatever he wants to you.
Yeah, considering it was all abusers in your family, I feel like there wasn't a huge incentive to stay.
Yeah, it was just like,
Yeah.
it did not seem cool to me. I was like put into like piano lessons for a while and I just hated it.
All right, so I mean, the last thing you have is like maybe cooking for them and like bringing
Oh my
food.
God.
That was like your last option then.
I think I was definitely a budding feminist without understanding the term at the time.
Yeah, I really felt like I was the same. I really didn't know, but it very much felt right once I learned what it was.
Yes.
Like,
yes, and there was no way that I was cooking for those men.
Right? Especially after you know them and you're like,
can you just like not like take care of yourself and make your own food?
Yeah.
Like, how hard is that?
You tell them. But yeah, I imagine it was just always hard walking that line with the family too, even with the leaving. I imagine for your mom, she had to make that decision of like, oh, I'm probably never going to see them again unless there's like a wedding or a funeral, that kind of thing that brings families together if it's not at church.
Yeah, that's been hard not being there anymore. Like I don't even want to see them. I actually saw a bunch of people who I hadn't seen in 24 years.
Wow.
This summer, it was my grandmother's 100th birthday party.
Wow, good for her.
She really is amazing. Like, she's this tiny little pygmy-sized woman.
Good, very good.
And she tries to get everyone to exercise. And she does like her little exercises, and
I'm picturing her with like the shake weight or something. Like one of those silly like ones that she bought on TV at the middle of the night. And she's like, you know what? I gotta keep moving.
Oh my God. I don't think she watches TV. Like, she is the most devout. Like, it's a little scary. I have to be honest.
And she's still a Christadelphian, that grandmother?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's all she can think about is her reward, for dealing with horrible husbands her whole life.
More than one?
Yeah.
Whoa, she got it once and bowled for another one. All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear about that, but I mean, it sounds like she came out on top. It's kind of the ending of that story. So
she is on the road to reward right now.
Good for her. I hope she gets it. We'll have an episode about the kingdom. We'll have an episode about the kingdom. We'll talk about that at some point. But yeah, I hope she gets something good. Maybe not that, but something good.
Yeah, me too.
Sure. All right, so let's start. We kind of already started going into leaving, but maybe you can kind of slow it down for us if you want to go through it and kind of zoom in on that time of your life with. It sounds like it started with your mother leaving, really, even if she wouldn't have probably said that herself that day. When she took her mental health break, maybe.
Yeah, I think of leaving for me as happening in 3 phases.
Okay.
The first phase happened when I was 16 and all this turmoil was going on. And my mom was like, we're not going. And that was not something I would have thought was even an option.
Right? It never was before. Like, you were sick and that was the only time you could stay home, right? And even then, my mom would like side eye me and be like,
Are you really?
Yeah,
really
are you sick enough? Like,
I'm sick of wearing the dresses. Oh my God, the tights were my least favorite thing. Wearing tights with a dress.
Yeah.
Awful.
And then I don't miss tights. I'm glad as a society we kind of just got rid of tights because.
So glad. Yeah, it was like the last 15 years gone. Love it. So yeah, that time when I was 16, I was so used to going, and there's various degrees of isolation that you feel as a Christadelphian.
Mm-hmm.
And so these were people that were such a big part of my life because my family, we didn't really have like a lot of outside friends or even like we weren't really big parts of the community.
Yeah, they're kind of withdrawn from their general community that they're in, like in the public sense of like joining Girl Scouts or being a volunteer on the PTA or something like.
Yeah.
Christadelphians kind of keep to themselves, so they'll associate with other Christadelphians at Christadelphian events. But I never really knew people who were Christadelphian and deeply involved in their community. They were not running for mayor or anything like that.
No, I couldn't imagine that.
No, it would be the biggest scandal.
Oh, it would be, because people would have to vote for you, and heaven forbid you.
And God didn't want you. Remember, you can't vote for someone God doesn't want. Be like, sorry, God didn't want you.
As if he's not omnipotent, right? Like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I think it just comes up with this debate of like free will or not then, because you're like, okay, well, what does it matter if I vote if whoever God wants is going to win? Like, I don't know. It gets really weird when they have their arguments around the voting thing and why they can't vote.
It's really, really weird. Yeah.
Because like, it shouldn't matter if God's just going to do it anyways and he's all powerful.
Right. And it's not like we're choosing, especially in the United States, you couldn't choose a king anyway if you wanted to, right? They're hereditary. Right?
Using that verbiage of the Bible, yeah, we don't vote for kings.
Right? So anyway, I think that's weird. Where was I here? Yeah, so I was isolated, and these were my people growing up, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like I wanted to, whenever somebody suggested that they pick me up and bring me to a meeting, I was like, okay, but it wasn't very often. I also attended like the Wednesday night Bible classes.
Okay.
Up until I left for college. Oh my God, thank God I left for college.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a really great turning point in my life, and I grew a lot.
And you were always in public schools, right?
I was, thankfully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember if there was anybody homeschooled. There might have been, actually, in the ecclesia. There might have been a family that did that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really recall it. Yeah. I went to college in Virginia, so it was
that's a big change.
A real big change. And I was excited.
You're already
to get
smiling.
Away. I was so excited to get away. I remember when I was a kid, like a much younger kid, in my times when I was maybe more spiritual, what I would pray to God about is for me to escape. I wanted freedom. I asked for wings so I could fly away.
Oh, and you did.
Like,
you just had
fervently.
To wait. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really excited. I was actually reading my journals.
Oh, you did too? Man, you and Heather are so good.
I was so happy to hear her say that. Yeah, I've always written in journals. And so I actually looked back to see, what my mindset was like during this time. And the last day that I was in Vermont before leaving for college, I wrote in my journal, this is my last day and I used to go by a different name. I'm not going to say that name now, but my real name is Keturah. So I said, this is my last day as blah, blah, blah Hammond from Springfield, Vermont.
Oh, this is Taylor Swift. She can't come to the phone now. She's dead. That was your moment.
Yeah. And that started, I would say, like my second phase of leaving. I went so far away, was in college with all of these people that were from different places, different areas, different races. I was exposed to all of these many different points of views. And then I also realized, and I kind of had these feelings before, I was gay. Oh. So that happened.
All right. You had all kinds of liberation on that front. Look at this. Going to college, embracing your sexuality and gender identity. Awesome.
Yeah, so that started the second phase, which was really tumultuous because it was me saying, I guess, I reject these views of the Christadelphians. My last time ever that I was ever in the one-room schoolhouse or any kind of Christadelphian event was, I think I was in between my freshman and sophomore years in college, and I'd come home.
Okay. I was wondering if you went to the Virginia ecclesias or not, because I know there's some down there.
I didn't.
You're like, they don't need to know I'm here.
Yeah, I was like, no.
Good for you, though. I think that's the right choice. You're like,
I think they were too far away. Like, I think the closest one would have been Richmond, and I was in Roanoke, Virginia, which is closer to West Virginia and more southern.
Yeah.
So they were too far away, which was good. I'm glad. There was a gathering there, and there was a speaker from, You know what? I think he's from Canada. I can't even remember his name now.
Oh, I would have no idea. That's all long forgotten in my brain.
I don't remember who he was, but he all of a sudden, in like the second half of the thing, started talking about being gay. He wasn't saying he was gay.
Oh,
He was talking about the sin of being gay.
like, I was so hopeful. But even then, I was like, he crashed and burned, didn't he? I had no hope for him. I was like, I could believe that would exist where someone was there and came in the community and was like, oh, gay, but I don't see the community allowing that. Exactly. But like someone with a platform, the platform, you know?
Yeah. Well, he was my last straw. So he was the straw that broke the camel's back because he started talking about that. I guess he was just like representing, you know, the doctrine or whatever. But
yeah, he assumes his audience is 100% on board. So it's not even controversial to him.
Right. So he's talking about the sin of gay thought. He actually clarified. He was saying that as long as you don't act on it.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I've heard that one before. Yep.
And
be gay. Just don't actually
just don't act on it? Like, what?
Just live a sad, lonely life. And then God might love you and your sad gay
might be okay. Like, maybe he'll forgive you.
Like, you'll be in the bottom, the top rung of hell instead of the bottom one. Like, there you go. like something like that, where it's like, it's just less bad. Like, you know, we kind of looked down on you, but at least you didn't do anything.
Yeah. And that just felt so crappy. Like, I remember looking around the room and knowing about me and then looking around the room at all these other young people my age and thinking about who else in this room is feeling the way I feel right now.
And can't say it.
And I knew I would never be able to find out or never be able to talk about it to any of them. And we were all alone, like lonely.
With your shame.
Right? Right as he finished, there was a break or something. I beelined it out of there. I still can see it so clearly.
Wow.
Leaving, I got in my mom's car, which I had borrowed to go there. And I drove up the hill away from that place. And I never, ever went back.
Love it. I love it. I like the empowerment of that scene of you driving away.
And yes, and actually when you were showing, like, you were in the Christadelphian Facebook when you were showing like some pictures that you might use. One of them was a road.
Yeah, we did a vote for. Yeah, I've been doing a vote for pretty much everything with the podcast. So we voted on the name, we voted on the graphics. People gave their voices to the intro. But yeah, I almost forgot about that. Yeah, one of them that was really highly contested was the road away.
Yeah.
So you were pro road.
I was pro road.
Yeah, I definitely could see why. I definitely relate to that too. In the United States, you can't really get around very well without a car. And having a car was life-changing to me. It really meant a lot of independence and autonomy and freedom. And even just when my sister was able to start driving and she would drive us away right after meeting ended, again, it was just that autonomy and how your life changes when you can actually choose where you are. And it's indicative when you're like, I gotta get out of here. And it's like, okay, this might mean something. Maybe I don't feel great here. Maybe I should consider why that is.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. So it definitely sounds like, as well as having trauma from the domestic abuse in your household, there was also the mental trauma of having to deal and grapple with sexuality and not fitting into the mold that they specified for you. You know, that narrow window where it has to be this patriarchal, heteronormative person. Everyone has to be married. They have to be men marrying women, have to have children. Like, there's all these kind of unwritten rules, but you know, someone will definitely nudge you and tell you if you ever forget what they are.
Yep. So or send you a mean letter.
Yeah, or just like tell someone who tells you that they talk shit about you. It happened to me.
Oh my God, yes.
Like, yeah, it's all the gossip and all that.
Crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine how difficult that was, feeling that way.
Yeah.
And there's no one to look for there. There's no elder LGBTQ people there. You know that there's no one to support you.
Absolutely. And that's why, so that my second leaving.
So we're in the second phase?
Second phase, yeah. Second phase was, you know what? these people, I can't even talk to them about this. This is like not even on the table, and I'm just done.
Yeah, because what would they tell you? Just stop being gay? Like, what else would they
Like,
offer you?
I don't know, nothing. They had nothing to offer me at that point. I
Mhm.
had seen all the things that they had to offer, and it wasn't for me. And so I just decided to forget about them. I didn't want to like think badly about God or the Bible or even Christadelphian,
Mhm.
like Christadelphia, I guess, at that point. I just wanted out.
Mhm.
And so I never went back. And so that was the second phase. And I felt like, I had conquered this. And then
Okay, what comes next? Oh man.
more recently, like a couple of years ago, I had like a burnout, like at work, and I was diagnosed with depression and all of this. I was out of work for a really long time dealing with this and in therapy. And that's when I started analyzing why I was the way that I was.
And then you go back to your childhood and you're like, oh shit.
Yes, yes. So one of my biggest problems are they all feel like they stem back to doctrine, this teaching,
Really?
the message they gave me,
Yeah.
which caused me to never be able to listen to my gut, not be able to stand up for myself,
Mhm.
and feel all of these like incredible levels of guilt and shame.
Mhm.
It was in such a low point in that point a couple of years ago that I can't even remember the impetus, like the really clear impetus that caused me to start doing all this analyzing of Christadelphia and doing all this
Mhm.
research, which I did,
Mhm.
finding the ex-Christadelphian group,
Yay.
and which is amazing, and actually finding Heather's blog.
Yes, me too. That's why she's our first guest. She's been the gateway for so many of us. We're just like, I need healing. Hi, Heather's blog.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I
Yeah.
actually contacted her through the blog, and
Mhm.
she, just gave me a nice response. And I felt like, wow, this is the first time that I've talked to somebody else like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was great. But that's when I started just really looking at the religion itself and what it was teaching. And then,
Mhm.
and that's when I completely rejected it. Since then, I think I've always kind of been an atheist, to be honest.
Okay.
But now I'm like, I am 100% atheist. Like that Christian religion is dangerous. That's my opinion.
Were you just holding on to doubt? Like, what if they're right? Like, what do you think was there, like, that kept you from saying I'm an atheist? Was it really just not knowing what you believed, or?
Yeah, I think there might have been a little bit of doubt. Like me, I still kind of like thought, well, maybe God does really exist.
Mhm.
And maybe his message was good. But then when I really started looking back at the message, like if you
Mhm.
really, really read the Bible,
Yeah.
and
If you read it for the first time as like an 18-year-old, you'd be like, what the
yeah,
is
it
going
is
on
it is
here?
messed up.
Yes. Right from the get-go.
Right, like the first story is terrible. Like
It's
that,
all terrible.
it's the point, which I feel like maybe because of my experiences, but like, these are like ancient incels that wrote this.
I've never heard it, but now I'm picturing it and it's just making it funnier.
Like that first story, man, like okay, Adam, he doesn't do anything. Like
Oh no.
he doesn't say to Eve like God told us not to eat this apple. He just sits there like
Useless.
a dummy.
Yeah.
And then when the punishments come around, he has to dig in the dirt, and she's gonna like die in childbirth. Like what? That's not equal. That's not equal at all. And yeah, I mean, I could go on. I mean, the Noah's Ark story with the to me the promise of the rainbow is like the man coming back after beating his wife and being like, "Honey, I'll never do it again. Here's some roses." Like,
Just
oh,
imagine all the bloated, stinking bodies floating over it all. And then there's just a rainbow
I'm
on
so
top. And
sorry.
just like, yeah, sorry that everyone died except for like 8 people. But, this is a happy scene.
Yay.
It's like in Monty Python. This is a happy occasion.
Oh, God. Now I've got Monty Python in my head.
I think that was my parents' first red flag that I wasn't going to stay. I was like, I love this movie. And they're just like, oh, no. They're like, this is not a good sign.
No.
Just constantly poking fun at that stuff, like with the holy hand grenade. Yeah. Are we still in the third stage? That was kind of brings us to present day almost.
Yes.
Having gone from physically leaving, which was a really important part of getting like thousands of miles away, having space to figure out who you are, to make the decision to finally leave. And then after that, it was finally looping back to process the impact and make really proactive decisions about, well, I do believe this, I do choose this, and I'm going to do this and that to further release emotional pain, mental pain, all of these things that are still lingering as side effects. And I'm taking back more power and improving my well-being by processing these things that happened to me and kind of cutting more and more of that out of your life and how it was impacting you every day. So it was less and less of an effect on you.
Yeah, that's a thank you. That's a great way of summarizing it. Yes.
All right. Awesome. And I like to ask this question just to get it on the record. So do you regret leaving? Because everyone's like, oh, you're going to regret it. And it's like, all right, everyone, answer up. How we feel?
100% no. I do not regret it. I think I'm sad mostly about feeling lonely. Like my family still mostly, or at least my immediate family and the extended that are still there. I feel like a black sheep.
Mm-hmm. And we're both dressed appropriately for that. Yeah. So we're both wearing black. Unofficial uniform.
That's right. No, I cannot imagine myself being there. So no, 100% no.
It sounds like as much as you've still had to carry the weight of a lot of negative life experiences, it feels like at the same time you've opened up the door to have a lot of positive life experiences that you never would have gotten to have, and the kind of fulfillment you would have been able to seek in that environment. Like you would have been able to have, I'm sure, relationships that you've had since then, especially, as well as, maybe career options or other things like that have panned out for you. Being able to live away from an ecclesia, since they do always encourage you to live near one, which again, you're able to, even with the Virginia thing, you weren't right by one, which is like a faux pas.
I remember people asking me about that, and I was like, no, it's too far away. Darn.
Oh, what a shame. Yeah, you kind of, yeah. So looking back now, are there any other positives now in your life that you still see from growing up during that time? Anything that you've integrated that was more positive from that time? I just like to ask in case there's anything, so it's not like we're just bashing. And for some people, there's certain things, some beliefs they've kept. Or
I've tried to think about that, and I can't really come up with anything.
That's acceptable. That's an acceptable answer. It's okay, especially considering the backstory of your childhood and all of that. That is an acceptable answer. That is okay. Heather can cheer everyone up with her story of growing up in an idyllic situation.
I really when I was reading her blog for the first time, was really happy that she had the experience that she did. And it felt like she had so much more agency in a way. Well, at least more agency than I did to decide what she wanted. She was able to organically over time figure that out on her own with anything horrible to her in the process.
Yeah, I definitely see that. It was nice that she didn't have a traumatic experience that pushed her in any direction. It was very much just her being there, seeing it, and slowly figuring out who she is and making choices that aligned with who she is. And she's a wonderful person, as we all know. So she made the right decisions for her. One thing I know she had said was that she's like, I don't think I'm very susceptible to a cult now. And even with the Toastmasters group that she joined for a little bit, she had been like, like my hunches are up. Do you feel like you're the same way? Like, have you joined any groups that have been positive for you? Have you felt like you less inclined to join a group because of having a previous association with Christadelphians?
I think I could definitely see the warning signs of
Yeah.
cultic groups now. I think it did take me during my phase 3 of analyzing it to really that skill. But I think I've had really positive group experiences since then.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, my world opened up so much
Aw.
from leaving. I'm a more open-minded person.
Yeah.
Growing
I
up,
definitely see that.
being told that you're the chosen people
Yes.
is not a good way to make friends.
And that everyone else is not the chosen, and they're all heathens. So
Yeah, that's
those
very
worldly
divisive.
people.
Yeah, the world. You're you
Can't be in the world.
Be in the world, but not of the world, or what is that?
Yeah, yep. I think you got
Something
it.
like that.
They
Yeah.
were of the world. That was the problem with those other students and people we were around as kids.
Everybody else is of the world. They're them. They're not us. They are them.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Us
I
versus
really embrace any kind of community that I can find outside of that.
Are there any in particular that you really loved or would kind of just recommend, in the sense of, I know that there are a number of people who've said, I've left and I'm struggling to make relationships. I'm struggling to find community. I've even seen someone in an atheist group go, I'm just going to go to church just so I feel like I'm not alone and I have community. And so for some people, they don't know where to look when they leave a church kind of community. So if you want to share anything that you learned or found successful, I think some people could probably benefit from that.
I have been volunteering for Meals on Wheels for years. And I think that's volunteering, being part of your community, your local community, something just small, like you know, somebody asks for help for a food drive or something, like, or a soup kitchen, just go there, like, meet people. You don't even have to say anything at first, talk to anybody, but it will help to break down your walls, break that judgment that we all kind of learned from Christadelphians. And I'm still trying to break that judgmental self down. I'm still working on it. So I say Meals on Wheels is my example. I go into people's homes. It doesn't matter what their house looks like. You know, these people got, like, there's hoarders. There's people that come to the door completely naked. But I have to give them food. They're hungry. So there's no place for judgment there. And then so there's that aspect, but then I also, like, I go in, I meet a bunch of other volunteers every time I go in there, do stuff together. It's not like a high, like, social commitment, because you're driving around and you're, you know, so for those people who are, like, kind of skittish,
maybe?
right? Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a good little.
It's like an entry level foot in the door into reconnecting with the wider world and feeling good. They do say, like, you get a sense of gratification or like a little high or something off of doing something good for other people. Like, it doesn't just make them feel good. They say it makes you feel good too to volunteer.
It absolutely does.
So,
yes, I would recommend it to anybody.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you were willing to share that. That sounds like a great cause for people to help out with. And I'm pretty sure that's in all of the states in the United States. And there's probably similar services in other countries as well, you know, where social services brings food to people, you know, who are elderly, disabled, and things like that, who are in need.
I think that, like, there are other denominations, other churches that do kind of like community service, like, as a thing that they do. And that was completely absent in at least my Christadelphian ecclesia. I don't
Yeah.
There's many out that
I've
actually were in the community.
What's funny is Christadelphians in general will talk smack about a lot of other religious groups, but I had dated at one point a Catholic, and I remember every year he and his entire family would go to the church, and they didn't go very often. It was like 3 times a year for like him and his siblings, but every year they never missed going and helping donate food and drop off food, and it was in one of the most dangerous cities in America, which was right near where I grew up, and I went with him when we were dating. We would go and we filled the entire car full of like turkeys and Thanksgiving food and canned stuff and packaged stuff. And we had all these kits and we had a list of addresses and families, and we would drop it off and drive through the city. And anyone who had contacted the church for food got food for their families. And I never did that with a Christadelphian, but it
Yep.
was really nice to do. And again, we were like going to different people's homes, meeting them, just saying hello and giving them their food and no questions asked, just take care, have a great holiday. And it was really rewarding. And it's funny because I grew up hearing, oh, like Catholics are so evil, they're so bad, they've got it all wrong, and then I was like, here they are, like the people I knew that were going to this, like his dad was doing pro bono work for the church with his careers that he was offering, his specialty for people for free. And then, they always made sure to do this volunteer charity work that was immediately improving people's lives. They can eat that day, they can have food for their family. Which makes more of a difference than handing someone a bottle of water or a Bible, I think, we give them a whole damn meal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you have to show up to our church first. They literally just, I think, had to like call or something. Like they didn't have to be members.
No strings attached.
No strings attached. It was just, we are giving back to our community. All you have to do is contact us, and our members are donating money, food, whatever, and we'll mobilize it, and they will volunteer. You don't have to leave your house to pick it up.
That's lovely. Yeah. I wish that we had done more things like that.
Yeah.
That would have been nice, and maybe I could have made more friends.
Yeah. I remember my sister saying she had suggested it once at CYC, and it was shot down, and she was almost kind of
my God.
I would say criticized. I think would be the right way to say it. I think she might even use a harsher word if so, but yeah, like very much negatively received. And so it was not even just not done. It was like frowned upon, which seems to go against the whole idea of churches. Like I thought that's why they're tax exempt, was because they are supposed to give back to the community. I saw your eyes just light up. You're just like, don't
it makes me so angry.
Yeah, especially considering the church you grew up in that had tax exemption, and you're just like,
I had never.
Sorry about your therapy bill for next week.
Yeah, that connection just happened, and wow, that makes me angry.
Yeah, you're like, the government's protecting these people. He's making sure they have more funds to do stuff with.
Okay, deep breaths.
Grounded. Yeah. As you get older, you get a little more cynical, but you're also just more intelligent, where you're like, oh, now I know all this stuff. I'm like, that makes it worse.
I kind of just wish I was still like the little kid, like playing around the picnic tables and stuff.
Yeah, because you don't know anything. You're like, oh, the sun's out. Today's great.
There's bees and flowers.
And they gave me watermelon. Yay. And then you grow up and you're like, now I know about socioeconomic problems. Like, dang.
Stupid bees, stupid flowers.
Everything's dying. The planet's dying. Yeah. So you already shared that you found the ex-Christadelphians from Heather's blog, her famous blog, which I have linked on our social media. I think it's in the show notes too. But how has it felt joining the ex-Christadelphian Facebook page? Has that been helpful still for you? Worth it?
Amazing. Totally worth it. Yes. I have felt so alone, and being able to know that I can be a part of a group of other people like me was one part. But then also hearing the stories that are so similar to mine, knowing that not only am I personally not alone, but my ecclesia and its many horrible problems is not a standalone thing. And still today, I'm told by people who are still in the Springfield ecclesia that it is just a sick ecclesia. And there are better ones out there. They're not all like this. And I mean,
I
I
like that
know
they're
that.
admitting that it's terrible. They're like, yeah, we
Yeah.
have problems that we're not addressing. Just go somewhere else then.
Yeah.
What? That's their solution? It's just like,
The other thing that they tell me is, oh, all the problem people are dead now, so like it's fine.
that
Like,
feels a little
no.
suspicious. Like, oh, how did they die? They're like, we solved the problem. Like, okay. All right, Aunt Janine, what were you doing?
Man, I wish that would be good. But that makes me
Sure,
really
yeah.
angry.
Yeah, that generation has
It's
really passed
crazy.
away, I imagine. Yeah, but still, not just you was impacted. At a minimum, there were people who saw it, there were people who knew about it, there were people who were affected by
Absolutely.
other people than just your dad even. And so you have a whole generation below them of people who, with most, I think most Christadelphians kind of aren't super pro therapy. You know, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I don't remember any Christadelphians who really were super into like self-help kind of therapy of just themselves. And so I wonder how many of them are rehashing the cycles or have unhealthy issues, you know, that are showing up in their family dynamics or things like that because they were also exposed to these really heavy, stressful things and a lot at young ages too. You know, I don't think that just goes away when those people die, because a lot of the times you see that like with wars and the vets come back and then these families have to deal with all the PTSD and a lot of negative things happen in the families, and then the kids grow up and you see how it often passes through different generations when there's really big traumas.
Absolutely. The Springfield ecclesia, so it wasn't just my family that had lots of domestic abuse. It was endemic, and it's like it decimated the population now that goes there. I know that a lot of the people have really struggled, have had horrible, just a lot of difficulties in life, and there's much less people that are there now.
Like, are they moving away to other ecclesias or leaving, you think?
Leaving.
Yeah. So we should put up
Um,
flyers for the ex-Christadelphian Facebook page in the Springfield, Vermont grocery stores so they can find us.
I love that.
Anyone in Springfield, Vermont, take note. We're always open to those who have left the fold.
Yeah. I feel bad. Like I feel bad for them that are
Well,
still
yeah.
going. Like
Yeah.
they want the old days, or they want that sense of community. They want this. Okay, maybe they don't want the dead
Maybe
people to
they
come back, but
yeah, I was like, I don't know if they want that. Like, that's more of like the Practical Magic movie where the evil guy dies and they're like, we need to
oh,
resurrect him. And it's like, no,
why
don't
would
do
you do
that.
that?
Why would you do that? Like, that's what picture is like, I abused you, now I'm back. I'm like, no.
Like no. Feature in my next nightmare. Thank you.
Again, sorry about the therapy bill. We're not charging for this podcast, so I don't have any funds to send for the guest therapy fund.
I love that movie, by the way, Practical Magic.
Tis the
Amazing.
season right now. Yeah, I just read the
Really amazing.
book.
Yeah.
The book was very different, by the way. There are no
Totally
midnight
different.
margaritas, which is a little disappointing.
So disappointing. Yeah. That wasn't really my
But there
favorite
is
book.
like a haunted lilac bush. So for like me and
That's
Heather,
true.
the gardeners were like, yeah, now we can think about like spooky springtime. Our lilac bushes. Yeah. So you've mentioned that you've been working a lot on kind of processing for yourself. Are there any other resources or tips or anything that you would share with someone who is either leaving or is going through trying to process something, like anything that you found helpful or just from your years of wisdom want to share?
I think it was the most helpful for me to be part of that Christadelphian Facebook group, knowing that I wasn't alone. And if you really truly feel like you have parted ways, that you can't go back, I think you should consider looking at it. But I want to say that this is a safe space for those people who have left, and people in the Facebook group are going to be talking about tough stuff that happened to them. Some of them are angry
Mm-hmm.
about what happened. and some of them might say things that you don't like to read. So I think you have to be really ready. Like you really have to know that you're not a Christadelphian anymore before you venture into this group. But if you really feel that way, it is a great place to not feel alone anymore.
Yeah, I definitely think that community aspect is so important and is so healing for anyone. Even just I've been in groups for other things that weren't even just that one in particular, but those have also been healing for talking about different experiences and connecting with people. In any situation where you're with people who can relate to your story, listen openly, and accept you, and provide that safe space for you to talk about it, I feel like that whole process can be very healing, and having that ownership over your story as well. And I think honestly, even just some of this interviewing, I know for some people it's going to be harder than others, but I think reclaiming your story, sharing it, I think at the end of the day, after going through it, I've always found sharing my story has been healing for me, and I think it will be for a number of other people. And I definitely relate as well with you talking about everyone in the group kind of having a different place where they're at. It feels like I kind of think about it as people being in the different stages of grief. So you've got like the anger people, you've got the sad people, you've got all these different stages of grief. And so that's part of why it's interesting. And I like to just kind of frame it for people like, oh, how long have you left and stuff? Because at some point, people will be like, oh, I left a year ago and I'm still like dealing with shit and I'm
Wow.
stressed and stuff. And then you've got people like Heather like, oh yeah, I left decades ago and it was fine. And so like she's kind of gone through like those phases years ago and she can reflect on them now and be at a place now where it's very open, and she's kind of gone past those into like just the acceptance, more cruise control part of your life where it's like, oh, that's a part of me but it doesn't control me, which I think is great for people to see. Because if you are still in any of those stages, where you're sad because you've lost friends or family, a lot of people have lost connections to people they were close with, it can be hard during those stages. And I think it's helpful to see like, oh, other people have gone through this and it'll be okay. It'll get better. I can see that you'll figure it out in whatever path you're on.
Yeah.
So I think that's another benefit of the group.
Yeah, it really just finally made me feel like I just never even met anybody else who had
You never
left.
really like will. Like
Why
there's
would
so few of
you?
us and we're
Right?
all over the country, like, and we wouldn't even recognize each other, especially having not seen each other for years, especially with the ecclesias being so isolated all over, where you pretty much just saw the people in your ecclesia, unless you were like a teen who starts going to a lot of regional events before you settle down and have your kids, but other than that, it's like, if you're going to Bible schools, you'll only see people at that Bible school, even like it's very regional.
Yeah. It's like you
So,
see them once a year, if that,
and
like
if
if
they
you can
don't
make it.
go, yeah, you won't see them. I can't imagine now as an adult, like in America, most jobs will only give you 2 weeks of vacation, which again, super lame. Other people in other
Yeah.
countries are like, we get like 6 to 8, and I'm very jealous.
Same.
But that's the thing, is the Bible school is 1 week long. That is 50% of your
So
vacation
long.
time.
You're gonna spend the whole
And
time.
it's so much money, and they spent their whole week there. It's like, I can't believe my parents did that. So often they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna like save up for this Bible school. We're gonna drive a couple states away. We're gonna be in classes day to night, eating in this loud like college rec hall, like
Yeah, it's
whatever.
like
That's like,
a
that's your
dorm.
relaxing vacation. Yeah, we're sleeping in dorms on the most uncomfortable mattresses. There's no air conditioning. I remember packing fans. Like it was rough. We had to climb the stairs. Like there was no elevators. It was just like, you're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
sweating. You're hiking all day. It was like, I think they got the cheapest deal for not the Mid-Atlantic one, but like the Eastern Bible School, because they would go up to Connecticut, I think, to Governor Dummer. And they would always get it the week that the greenheads were the worst on the beach, and you would get
Oh
bit by
no. Oh my
flies
God.
and it hurt, and you'd just be there like slapping flies off you, and it's like, I feel like they got a discount for this week. Like, this is bad. This is awful.
Terrible.
Yeah, it was rough, and I remember that from my childhood. But that was like our family vacation,
Yeah.
was going to this
It's
Bible
like a
school.
big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. You waited all year for that. You'd see your friends, and once a year, it's like, okay.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
weird to
God.
look back, and as an adult now, like my mom would have been my age doing that and bring all the kids.
Yeah. Oh,
It's weird.
yeah. Yes, I can't imagine. It is strange to think about your parents at your age now as
Yep.
an adult.
Yep.
Definitely.
And at some point, I want to even compile a playlist of things that have helped people, of like books, music, podcasts. Because I remember hearing a number of different like music ones that I've liked, and there was one singer who made a whole album about leaving their church. And I remember coming across
Wow.
that while I was leaving. So I want to like ask people about anything that they found. I also at one point was getting into books, and there's a number that I read that were helpful. And there's a few ex-Christadelphian ones. So I'm going to try to interview all the authors to talk about their books for people who are
That'd be
interested in that.
awesome. I would
Yeah.
love that.
Oh, yeah.
I just remembered something that there's a YouTuber, and she's not a Christadelphian.
Yeah, this is like the only ex-CD media so that I know of, like officially.
There's a YouTuber who I really like, and I think that other people know her already. And because I just really got into, if you feel like you're questioning the doctrine, and you feel a little atheist, she's really good for that.
Atheist.
A little bit.
It's like that song. Everybody's a little bit atheist. Sometimes.
I need to write that song. That's great.
I love parody songs. Me and my fiance do that all the time. We just make up songs using like popular tunes, and it's so much fun. I highly recommend it.
I love that. Me and my partner, we play and sing together. So that'd be fun. I can't find her right now. She usually is like right in my home feed of YouTube, and she's not showing up right now.
Wow.
But yeah, she just got this really great way of analyzing things, and super smart. And also she's obviously very spiritual and very dedicated at one time. So I think it resonates.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is I think with being ex-Christadelphians, I think there's always going to be people who want to try to make us fit their preconceptions of like, oh, well, you must have not have been like a real Christadelphian. And I was like, right? Excuse me. Yes. Heather sent me pictures of her Bible with the Bible markings. Like, excuse me. And she was baptized. She sent the pictures with her head coverings, now live on social media for people to see. She was a real Christadelphian. She did the whole 9 yards. And so even with the rest of us, like we were going, like you just said, going to the Bible schools, going to classes, going to weeknight youth groups. And so it's like we were in it, we were really believe this at some point. It was only, we went through different stages, processing and choosing to leave, and like you had said, but I think people don't want to think that we really exist and that it could be that people just like them could leave. They could look around one day and be like, wow, that person's not here anymore.
Yeah, especially like for me, there was a time where I really wanted to believe. I was reading, I read the Bible several times from cover to cover.
Did you do the Bible companion method?
I did that, but I also just went straight through it. Like
oh, wow.
Times.
Like a normal person. Like reading a normal book.
I was an avid reader of like any book I could get my hands on. And so I really wanted to study. I was very academic and I wanted to really learn it. And I wanted to feel this spiritual connection. I really, really fervently wanted that. I wanted to understand. I just I couldn't get that feeling. I felt like there was nothing there. There was, prayer didn't do anything. There was nothingness above. And it was esoteric. And
I mean, there's not much there for women, especially to latch on to.
It was frustrating.
Yeah.
When I really did dig into some of these words, it didn't feel good to me. I didn't feel like I, as a woman, was important to God. Like I did not matter. I don't know if those thoughts were very clear in my head at that time, though.
It was probably more intuitive of feeling it, but like I don't even know if we would let ourselves admit those feelings, honestly, with the amount of conditioning we had to accept it.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, it just never came to me. I really wanted it.
Well, I mean, you never got baptized, and usually when you have that strong feeling of like, oh, maybe I am connected, I am starting to feel something, I feel like usually that's when you have that impetus to be like, all right, let me go jump in the tub. Let me go for a dip.
Oh my god! So it was like in the floor.
Oh,
like,
yours was like a real one? Like they
well,
installed one?
I think underneath the floorboard. So there was like
Okay,
this
like
thing
Edgar Allan
you
Poe's
lifted up.
heart.
Oh, it was a little scary like that. Yeah, yeah.
Oh no!
Weird.
Like a trap door opens and there's just a tub?
Yeah. So it
Was it on the platform? Like where was it in the building?
So there was kind of sort of two sections of the one room.
Okay.
So there was the place where we had service with all the chairs and the podium. That was one half. And then the other half, we would set up tables and have like a dinner there or something.
Okay, yeah, like the lunch and stuff.
If it wasn't outside, it would be in there. And there was like this part it was like at the kind of at the back, like as far away from the podium on the other side as possible. This was a big one-room schoolhouse, by the way.
It's really sounding big. Really big because the ecclesia I grew up in was also a one-room schoolhouse.
What?
Yes.
So weird.
Yes. So again, I was just like, interesting. Yeah, one-room schoolhouse, and ours was the whole hall on the top floor was all the hall with the chairs and the podium. That was it. And then the downstairs was where they would eat and they would do like Sunday school and stuff. So it sounds like all of yours was more on like one floor. There
was actually a second floor. It was really smaller. It might have been, I can't really remember. It might have been an attic at one point and they finished it. And that's where the young adult Sunday school classes were up there. Where I remember they were talking about Y2K. This thing was so weird in my, oh my God, it was so weird.
More
in my
Y2K drama.
I was really asking questions because they were talking about how this was Armageddon. Like this was it, right?
I mean, well, they had their 7,000-year plan, and then they like timed it out where they're like it was a 6,000-year plan and the 1,000-year reign at the end. So Y2K was a nice even number to say like, hey, this is the end of the world. Yeah, and that was 2000. I was 20. That was 24 years ago for anyone who was counting down about whether Armageddon happened or not.
Didn't happen.
Yep. Turns out it wasn't it.
Yeah. There was a lot of pressure to get baptized.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, leading up to it. I was asking a lot of questions. I was like, is this really going to happen? Like, are you sure? Like, it was weird. I got weird answers, but then they talk about it on Sunday and then
I kind of want to just like, I want to ask almost in the group, like, what are the weird questions you asked that you got weird answers to? And then take those questions and have everyone like reach out to different ecclesias for answers and then see how much they vary. Because so many people have told me insane things, like, or not just me, but like in the group, in the Facebook group, people be like, oh yeah, I was told this by Christadelphian. I'm like, what? Like, I have never heard that anywhere. And that's definitely not like in the Bible explicitly, like someone made an assumption or like a best guess. And I'm just like, I feel like if you ask all these different people, you know, if you ask a Christadelphian in Australia and you ask, you know, someone in America and like all over and all these different ecclesias, like I feel like you could get 10 different answers to the same question if they don't know the answer. And so I feel like with the Y2K thing, you'd have some people being like, oh yeah, it's definitely happening. And some people be like, maybe, and some be like, definitely not. And then it's like, okay, but you're all Christadelphians and you're using the same source material. So does the Bible say it or not? Like, doesn't that kind of point to a lack of validity in the claims if they can't match up between ecclesias? Because supposedly they're all going off the same creed, they're all going off the same book, all this stuff. So it's like, why are there these differences? So I wouldn't mind, you know, playing around with that and seeing if we could kind of almost, it's kind of like a mini science experiment, but like a social one.
There's a verse that I'd like to pose to people. It's in, I think it's near Revelation. I can't really remember when. But when I was doing like this fervent reading of the Bible, I came across this verse that said, in the kingdom, and I'm not saying it correctly, but
we're paraphrasing. All right.
So paraphrasing.
No one can tell us that the Bible doesn't say that.
I do not own the Bible anymore. So
yes. I mean, I guess we could Google it if that's possible too. Google something.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes.
It said, in the kingdom, there will be no male or female.
Yes, I have heard that one.
I
Everyone's not binary.
I became obsessed with that one when I was doing my fervent reading and wanting to be all spiritual. I really wanted to
Really?
learn
Okay.
all about that. Like, there's not going to
who
be
we
any
would
male
be.
or female. Like,
Yeah.
I'm ready for that. Like, let's get rid of that male or female stuff. And I asked about it, and they were like, "Oh, it doesn't mean that." You know, like, so I wonder, like, what other answers have people gotten?
All right. Also, I've posed this question to friends, and I don't know if you want to input. My question, going off the non-binary thing, what would the Christadelphians call each other? It sounds like a set to a bad joke, but what would the Christadelphians call each other if they don't call each other brother and sister and they're all non-binary?
Oh my God.
It's so rooted in these concepts of gender normative kind of structure. Like,
they wouldn't be the Christadelphians.
Would they just be like, sibling Thomas, please come to the front? But like, do you mean Janice Thomas, or do you mean like Joseph Thomas? Like, which one do you want? Because like, can females go up now and say the prayer? Like, it's just siblings so and so.
Maybe something I'd be interested in.
I wanted to bring it up in the gender episode, but I'm already just thinking about it because we are going to have a gender episode. I'm very excited for it. And we're going to talk about LGBTQ in an episode. But that's something I'm already thinking about because someone posed like, okay, like, what if someone's like trans in the ecclesia? Like, how would that change it? And how would it change it if someone's non-binary? And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I feel like it would just throw everyone off. Their minds would explode. Because it's so against the traditional, like, this is the way we've always done it.
They are founded on patriarchy.
Yes.
And like, without the patriarchy, does this thing even exist? Is Christianity even like a thing?
Women have to serve. They have to give children. The men have to always be in charge. They always have to be this figurehead. And then children are kind of like, shut up until you're old enough to be one of us. and that's
it's gonna be so much fun.
Yay!
You'll love cooking for the men. It'll be great.
Yeah. Today, I think it was yesterday actually, I messaged Heather a video I saw on Instagram, and it was this little girl, a daughter of someone I was following who's Christian. And she's like, oh, my daughter's getting baptized today. And it was like a whole video of her getting baptized, which is so weird for me to see as someone who's now like completely outside of religion. And she just looks so little bitty. It was just like sad to see. And she's just like waiting and looking around. Everyone's watching her. You know, she's got this like cameras on her now. Cause at least with us, like, it was like digital cameras maybe when I was getting baptized. You didn't have like live streams.
Oh my God.
But they're like live streaming her baptism, and he's like puts his hand on her face and like pushes her under the water, and he's like, "I'm her grandfather, but now she's my sister." And I'm like, ew! It's like, what the fuck is that? I broke her. Keturah, are you okay? Yeah, like slap you on the back there.
Wow. That is so foul.
Yeah, and again, everyone in that room was like, yeah, like that's what we say. Like, this is great. She's a sister now. And also outside of it, we're like, ugh! Like, what was that? No. Yeah, and I feel sad because again, she's so young. She is not. I don't think she's hit like the age of reason. People say like at least like 13. She's not hit the age of like full adult consent of being 18. Like, I feel like again, I have these red flags of people pressuring women to join young, even. They talk about if you look in like feminist books and histories, a lot of times the patriarchal way of forcing women to be compliant and stay in the role in society was marriages and kids, because they would just put more and more responsibilities on them and pressure on them so that they couldn't really leave. It would be harder for them, you know, to get out of their situations, all that kind of stuff, and then force them to need more finances, rely on a man, you know, feed the family, all this kind of stuff. And so you see that these structures are in place. And so the younger they get her to join, and then condition her and be like, oh, well, now you also have to marry into here. And then you have to have kids, and just kind of setting her on that path before she's even grown enough to figure out who she is and question if that's the life path she even wants to be on truly for herself, without it being her parents having brought her there continually, hoping for this outcome, like stacking the cards and
Yeah.
saying, this is what we want, this is good, this is what you need in your life.
It's really coercion. It's scary. I feel lucky that, in a way, that there was so much turmoil in my life during the time that I would have gotten baptized that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because my sisters both did. My sister, one of them, I think she was 16, like she was 16 or 17.
Yeah, that's like the more traditional age, is like that age range, like teenagers.
Yeah. But that's still, like, that's way too young. Like, I didn't feel like I was fully, like, aware even of myself until I was 27.
Yeah. Yeah, late 20s was when I felt like that too. I was like, oh, I'm starting to figure out who I am finally. That's about time.
Yeah, like everything all of a sudden was like, oh, I see this now. It's just like adults' feelings.
Yeah, really grow into it. And then I just have more of a statistical question. Did you notice in your family, did the people who got baptized, were they more likely to stay, or did many or any of them leave who had gotten baptized of your siblings? I was curious if that made a difference, because you hadn't. So I guess that makes more sense. You know, you were kind of more distant from it.
So one of my sisters followed the typical route.
Yeah.
And she got baptized young, or at the typical age, and then right after she got out of college, not college, sorry, high school,
okay,
high school, married, and that was a whole other thing. Horrible, one of the horrible turmoils of my life and hers, with that husband that she had.
Oh no.
My brother-in-law. I would say she's the one who's been most consistent as being part of the thing.
And she had a high level of commitment as well already, and stayed. So I think there's some potentially correlation there. You know,
my other sister didn't get baptized until she was much older. Like, I think now I didn't go, obviously. It was like, I think it was 10 years ago. I honestly don't know when exactly it happened, because she knew that I wasn't going to come and see it. So she didn't, I'm sure, she didn't even tell me about it.
Yeah.
But she kind of like went back after some difficult things that happened in her life that, I mean, they were really traumatic. Her daughter passed away. So she went
that's
kind of, I think that.
Yeah, she went that community probably. That. Yeah. Even if it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely see some negatives to the Christadelphian community from my own experiences. So I think it's sad when I've seen so many more fulfilling communities besides that. And I wish some of those people would have that. But I understand you can only work with what you know. And if that's, the first one that comes up, I mean, it's still better for them to have something over nothing when they need community and they're going through something hard. So that's very understandable. Okay. So very different. What's funny is I also have sisters, and again, all three of us have completely different experiences. We all had totally different times we got baptized or left, and all these different things. It's really funny how different they are, for having grown up in the same ecclesia, in the same households. It's funny how that is.
Yeah, it's like I all have completely different views of the childhood and the ecclesia in ways. We can all agree that it was a sick ecclesia, but they think that it's okay now. But I think that you can't get rid of all the potential for a dangerous, like, I think
it's that probably under the floorboards. It's just hiding.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Murphy's Law really showed itself in my ecclesia. Anything that could have gone wrong did.
Yeah, honestly, and we will tell you more about that when you're on a future episode, because I've already been diving into some of the things that went wrong and seeing how wrong they were. And I think for people like me who are a bit younger, who don't know some of that background, it's kind of mind-blowing. It's pretty wild. It's going to be a very wild episode. And I can only imagine, just for anyone in that ecclesia, that being a really traumatic time period for them. And again, depending on your ages and stuff, the amount that you knew and were involved in it would be very different. And what you felt being there after that, I think, would definitely depend on, your gender and age and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Would be safe to say.
Yeah. And so I am 10 years younger than my sisters, 9 and 10 years younger. So there's that,
Yep, that
gap as
gap.
well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, imagine going through something at 10 years old versus 20 years old. Just the level of maturity and experience and resources and stuff you have is completely different. And just like your emotional capacity and all that kind of stuff. And so it makes sense that some people, even if you grow up in the same household, the amount of traumatic experiences you might have or emotional difficulties, things like depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever, you can have a much stronger or a much higher amount of that based on you just having grown up in a different time period. I've noticed in my family, I had a very different childhood being the youngest than my sibling who was the oldest. And when you look at it, my parents were a lot younger having him and had a lot more on their hands having a lot of kids by the time I was around.
Yeah.
Very different.
It's like, oh, she'll change her own diaper.
That was basically what it was at. Yeah.
That's my other recommendation. Go to therapy.
Honestly,
For
yes.
everybody. Yes, therapy is good.
I
Promise.
also have done that track. I've done the move out and go to therapy track, which is kind of, I think we're going to make like a track for the people who are ex-Christadelphians. We can do that. There's the standard Christadelphian path. Why can't we have an ex-Christadelphian one? Be like, this, move away. Move far enough away from an occasion that they can't find you.
Formula.
Here's our formula.
Formula for ex-Christadelphian success.
Yes.
Yes.
Someone will write the book on it and be like, here you go. Handbook.
I like it.
We need therapy. This. Yes. All right. Thank you for coming on, Keturah. It was such a wonderful experience chatting with you, hearing all about your experiences. And I hope people get a lot out of our conversation. And thank you for handling some really difficult subjects with so much grace and respect to all of the people who you grew up with who are Christadelphians and who still remain Christadelphians and family and friends and so on. So again, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. It's great to meet you. Great to see you in person.
Yes, it was great to meet you and not just your Facebook avatar and to actually get to chat. This has already been wonderful having this time to chat with some lovely ex-Christadelphians from our group.
Thanks so much.
And until next time, everybody. Thank you to everyone who has helped make this episode of the podcast possible. Today's episode was edited by me, Zinnia. I'd also like to thank Al Kroons for creating our intro music and the ex-Christadelphians that submitted audio for the intro music. If you'd like to join our community, you can find us at the group for ex-Christadelphians on Facebook. You can also follow our social media on Facebook and Instagram at LifeAfterLeavingPodcast. If you'd like to come on the podcast, reach out to me at LifeAfterLeavingPodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving a rating and review or sharing this podcast with a friend. That's all for today. Thanks and see you next time.